For today's webinar, we're going to be kind of going through setting up your map for final presentation, kind of some of the steps that are involved in there, and getting it ready for either printing or inputting into a PowerPoint presentation, kind of however you want to work with the map there. And this is all going to be done through GeoAtlas. This is working under the assumption that all the well data and everything else has been QC'd, your layers have been set up, and they're kind of ready to go. And now you're just ready to get ready for a presentation. So we're going to be looking at kind of cleaning up your GeoAtlas map for the final presentation, condensing it down to just a couple of layers that you're going to be working with, and kind of getting it cleaned up that way. Using Symbology to present your data clearly, and kind of give it some pop there for your presentation. Sometimes people just want to see the pretty pictures, so kind of help you set up that information. You'll also be working with combining and subsetting some of your layers of similar types to condense the layer load a little bit, primarily done with shape files. So I'm kind of going through little steps on how to set that up. And then finally setting up your print setup and your map options to create your quality presentations. So kind of all the steps that are involved in getting all that information there to your map. So I'm just going to run through a couple of bullet points on some of those first, and then I'll kind of show what all is involved in getting that set up there. So the first is going to be whenever you're cleaning up the map. The key thing here is going to be your layer selection. Your layer list, whenever you're working in there, over time you've got several layers available on the map, and you're just going through and you're hiding them with the eyeball icon, whether you want that layer to be visible or not. So typically whenever you're cleaning up the map here, in this case, you want to condense that list down to just the layers you want to set up for your presentation. Even if the layer is hidden, it's still loaded into memory, and so that kind of increases the layer load and either causes longer rendering times, or in certain cases when you're printing out layers, they're still loaded into memory. So you want to kind of condense that load a little bit and save you some memory whenever you're getting ready to actually print that data out. You also wanted to move any ESRI layers that you have there on the map down to the bottom of the layer list to avoid any kind of overposting. So a lot of those images, typically satellite images or any of those map images, they are, for lack of a better term, solid images essentially. There is no transparency option. So you want to put that at the bottom of the list so that it's not overposting on top of other layers. There might be some other editing you'll have to do to get certain types of layers to post on top, but we'll kind of walk through some of that as we go through here. Symbology is another key part of setting up that final presentation. It helps you to represent some of your data in a colorful way, also in just a very easy to read graphical way. That's going to be done either with thematic mapping or bubble maps. You can also do in conjunction with the bubble maps, you can do proportional pies, which we'll be showing off here as well. Thematic coloring is used to represent non-numerical data, any kind of text or date information you have in your database. Thematic mapping can help you color that information. The bubble maps can be used to represent your numerical data. And same with the proportional pies, they'll be used to represent your numerical data. Primarily it's used to represent production data, but that's not always the case. There might be some other times where you can represent any other kind of data that you have saved in the database, whether it be some zone items, some curve data statistic information, anything brought over from your petrophysics. Again, just any kind of numerical data you have in the database, you can put that in your bubble map display. And lastly, you can display some annotation objects directly there on the map, whether it be through a layer or when you just draw them directly on the map itself. Within whenever you set it into page view, you can just draw objects on the map so that they won't be necessarily saved to the map or saved to any kind of layers, but they're just there for your final presentation. When you're cleaning up some of the layers, you can use some combined subset options to help you lower the layer load. This is done with layers of similar types and similar entities. So primarily it's done with shape files. Whenever you're bringing in shape files, you're importing them in county by county or state by state, something along those lines. You just want to combine all those together so you don't have a long list of 20 different county shape files. You just want that to be one shape file that's representing all counties. You can combine those together and even subset them to clip them to a particular AOI if you want to. This helps you trim down the layer list, save on the number of layers that are displayed on the map. So it's kind of one of its key purposes there. And then the last steps is going to be setting up your page options and your print settings. Page sizes can be determined by the printers that are available to the machine. So it's going to be your plotters, your just regular plain old printers, and then your PDF writers as well. They'll determine kind of what page size and settings you can apply to the final presentation. So there's various PDF writers that can be used to print the PDF files. The two that I typically use are called the Qt PDF writer and BullZip. Both of those are free to download. And they give you a lot more control on the page size customization that you want to put up for that final presentation. The typical, I think it's just the plain old Microsoft PDF writer or something like that, doesn't give you very much control on the page size. You don't really get to customize it. You're fairly limited in your options. Your maps can also be exported out to image files, whether it be JPEG, PNG, TIFF image, whatever you wanted to export it out as. That then can be inserted directly into a presentation, PowerPoint presentation, or you can print the image directly as opposed to going through GeoAtlas if you want to do it that way. With those maps, whenever you export them, the key aspect is going to be what your DPI is, your pixel size. The larger it is, the larger the file will be. So just be aware that you control some of that. But again, larger you go, you may be losing or running into some memory problems depending on the image loader. And then title blocks, annotations, and map legends can be inserted to create your quality presentation there into the page view. And we'll kind of look at how you can customize some of that as you go through and build out that map. Okay, so let's take a look at the map here in GeoAtlas. So as I mentioned before, we're kind of working from a point where all the data has been brought into the presentation or to my map already. Well data has been QC'd, layers have been built. So I'm just working at cleaning it up now and getting it ready for my presentation. So first aspect of that, as I mentioned before, is kind of cleaning up your layer list. You want to make sure that the list is only combining or containing layers that are going to be used for the final presentation, and not any other kind of layers that are just there on the map but hidden for later use or anything else like that. Again, some of those will still be loaded into memory, whether they're displayed or not. So you, in the interest of rendering those objects, you want to make sure you kind of limit that down to just a smaller condensed set of layers that are easier to work with. As I mentioned also, one of those aspects that helps with that is you're combining and subsetting layers of similar type. So I can go to my layers combine subset option, and then you just choose the layer type that you want to combine. Again, they have to be similar type. I can't take a well-based layer and combine that with an isomap. I can't take a shape file and combine that with, say, a lease map layer. They have to all be the exact same type of layer if I want to combine them. So I'll choose ESRI shapefile, and I'll see there's the shapefiles that I brought in, some county lines, my combined data that I've done before already, some section lines and some township lines. And under my AOI, I have a state outline as well. So I can combine all these together simply by checking the box of what I want to include in a single layer here. And then choose the layer that I want to output it to. I can overwrite an existing layer I've already gotten there. Or I can give it a completely new name here of whatever I want to call it. Be as descriptive there as you want with what's being included in here. So you just create the layer and finish. And I'll go through the process of combining all those layers together into one single layer. So again, that primarily comes in the cases where you've got several different county shapefiles. You just want to condense it down to one. Okay. So all that that information there is being displayed on the map, combined, subsetted, however you want to clip all that information out to your particular AOI. I've taken the Williston Basin and I've clipped it out to my Bakken field play. That's a small section of primarily my deviated wells out here in that region. So I've dropped this down to a small region that I'm working with. So once I've got all that layer list subsetted and combined into just the layers that I want to put into the map, I also want to start maybe sprucing it up a little bit with some of those symbology options that I mentioned before. So I've got three set up here using the thematics, the proportional pies, and the bubble maps. So with I'll look at thematics first. Thematics I've used with my section outlines here to highlight some sections that have some information that might be of interest to me. And that can be done through any kind of information that's saved directly into that shapefile, or any other kind of data that I've gone through and hand entered into that shapefile. So in this case, I've hand entered a couple of values for a few of these section outlines. In this case, primarily just kind of highlighting where I have some of my deviated wells, or some of my drilled sections here. So I've got thematics set up for the section lines. It's going to be based on whatever data you have within that shapefile. You'll see a couple of the different options here. Again, all of that is coming from whatever was imported originally. PLSSID I've just used to edit manually some of those values and associate a value with it. In this case, like I mentioned, I'm just highlighting where I have drilled sections on the map. And so I can customize that with a particular pattern fill, however I want that to be done, a particular color, and I can choose whether I want to include a background color with that as well, changing the line style over here. So I got that set up as kind of a dashed line, or sorry, a slashed line running through these various polygons of a bright green color. I can see what that'll look like here on the map. I forgot to check it on here. There we go. And again, that's just kind of highlighting for me where I've got my deviated wells within these regions. You can use those thematic colors to kind of highlight any kind of polygon information or well information, any kind of entity really, to kind of highlight those particular regions for me, so I can see maybe there's some working interest in the areas based on some section blocks or some lease shape files you've imported. All that information can be displayed here as long as that information has been entered into the layer in some way. I can then display it here with some thematic coloring to highlight those regions for whoever might be interested in that information. So that's with the thematic mapping. Like I said, you're not limited to polygons. You can also base it on well data. You can also base it on line data. Any kind of layer you want to represent that type of data for, thematics can help you out there. Next, I'm going to look at the proportional pies. I've set that up here with some production data on my wells, my cumulative oil, gas, and water volumes. I've got included here with the pie charts. I'm just going to go ahead and toggle this on and see what it looks like here on the map. I'm going to apply this to the bottom hole locations of my deviated wells. I've set this up for straight hole wells. I want to copy that over. So for deviated wells, I'm posting this at the bottom hole. You can choose to also post it at the surface hole if you want to handle it that way. And so you can see the pie charts displayed here on the map representing my production data, kind of showing what type of production I'm getting on all these wells from my cumulative oil, gas, and water data. With this data, I've kind of filtered out, with all the production data in the entire database, just the production data that pertains to the wells in this region. So I've cut my oil volume max from 2.2 million, which is the biggest producer in the whole Williston Basin project that I've got here, down to about just 400,000, which is the biggest producer just within this Bakken field region that I'm looking at right now. So you can kind of customize how you want to represent that data, filter out certain values if there's an outlier that you want to eliminate. You can do that here. So I've set up some filters just to represent that information a little bit better. The representation of these symbols can be handled in a number of different ways. The first one is you just have a single set radius for each pie chart. So each pie chart, same size regardless of how big of a producer it is, and that radius is just set here with a singular value. But you can also combine it with the use of bubble maps, which I'll show here in a moment. For those who are familiar with bubble maps, though, the bigger a producer is, the larger the symbol for that production is. So in this case, you have a single set radius for each pie, but the radius of that pie is proportional to the sum of all the field values. So the bigger the producer, the bigger the size of the pie chart. So again, you can kind of see just a representation of that here in a couple of them. Big producers get a larger chunk of the, or larger size of that symbol. Smaller producers will get a smaller size, but the radius is going to be a set size for each individual symbol. And that can be controlled here with my minimum and maximum. Smallest producers will get a minimum value, largest producers will get the maximum value. Keep it back on this one here. Okay, so that's my proportional pies. I've got that representing my production data here across a number of these wells, both straight hole and deviated wells. So I think that one just looks a little bit cleaner. But I can also do this with bubble maps, bubble symbols. Toggle off my proportional pies, toggle on my bubble maps. The bubble maps, I've done a similar type of thing, so a minimum, maximum range. But with this one, I can only represent one type of data at a time. So I can do cume oil volume, cume gas volume, cume water volume. But if I want to do all three of them, I'd have to basically create 3 different layers, one for each type. So here I've got my cume oil volumes and symbols ranging from there. Go to preview what that will look like on the map. So again, biggest producers will get the bigger bubble size. And I've got my color scheme there applied to each one of the individual ones. There directly on the map. So 2 different ways to kind of represent that same type of data. One is representing all 3 types, cume, oil, gas, and water, together into a single pie chart. The other is just a bubble map for a single type of data. And again, that can be any kind of numerical data, not just limited to production. Well, production being the most common use of it that I'll typically see in here. So I'm going to go back to using the pie charts. Just make sure I got that on the bottom hole. Okay. So now I've got my thematic mapping. I've got my proportional pie mapping. I've got kind of that data represented in a way that I think will stand out a little bit more, give it more color, some more pop there. And now I'm ready to kind of take this map into that that final presentation to kind of represent some of the data that way, and kind of see what I can do to set all that up. So with the map here, you're able to include a lot of different information directly here on the map, in a number of different ways to kind of show what you want to display here in your final presentation. And that'll be done through the use of the map properties here. So that can be set up here first with the scale. You want to set up a uniform scale to use there in the map, however you want that to be set up. I'm going to bump this to 1 to 18,000 for my size here to fit the map area. That's going to be scaled to kind of fit whatever your page size is going to be. If you want to see what your page size is when you go to your page setup, you'll have to choose the printer. So again, the Qt PDF writer is the PDF writer that I typically use, and then after that, your printers are going to be what's available to you based on that machine. So plotters, DesignJet printers, whatever other kind of printers you have set up in the office, that's what's going to be represented and available for you here. And then you can go to your properties to start setting your page size. So here I go to the advanced options, and there's the page size. So I have a lot of different plotter size options that I can separate. Select through here, and then I'll also have my custom page size where I can choose my width and my height of the image that I want to do there. So again, that's going to be dependent on the type of printer that you have set up there. So I said this one has that custom option. Not every one of them does though. So I'm just going to do that 36 by 42. That's how I've already got it set up. You can change your DPI options here. Again, the higher the DPI, the more memory that's going to get eaten up whenever you're saving out that image file. In some cases, it won't be able to handle it. So make sure you're working with a reasonable DPI with the objects that you're printing out. Once you get up to about 600, you're pretty okay there, but you can increase it. 600 to 1200 DPI range, typically okay, depending on what all is on the map. So I got all that set up. So I got my page size represented here. 36 by 42, that blue outline represents a single page. So I got my map image put in there, set that up through the scaling here, one for 18,000. Next, I want to include some information in my scale bars. So I'm just going to put that scale there. I'm also going to put the 1 inch per 1,500 feet. I'm going to put an actual scale bar for use inside of that as well. Oops, I need to include the units. And I'm going to bump the size up to about, let's go 20. So I've got, I can put a number of different types of scale bars in here all together. I'm going to group all these together into a single one. The scales and then the actual bar representation of that. So let's take a look at that. So there's my scale bar. I'm going to display this here directly on the map. So I can overlay that on top of the map if I wanted to there. I can also put a backdrop of an annotation object, maybe a white background if I don't want it to cross over any of my section lines here. But I think that looks okay there for the map. I don't want to cover anything else up. After the scale bar, you might want to include a north arrow. A number of different north arrows you have available to you. All of these are WMF files, and they'll be found in this particular location. So program data, GeoGraphix data folder, and then the north arrows folder from there. You can create your own custom one. They must be saved as a WMF file and then placed into that folder, and then you'll be able to find them as you go through here and pick out the north arrow that you want to use. With one of these north arrows, the first one on the list, I'm able to also include magnetic north and grid north angles on that particular north arrow if there's any kind of grid correction information that I might need to share with that presentation. It's only available with this first one, this first arrow. All the other ones are more graphical representations, so I have that same kind of option. So I'm going to include that in there as well. So there's my north arrow. I'll move it up here to the top of the map. And you can increase or decrease the size there however you want. So I got my north arrow, got my scale bar. Let's get going through here. Title blocks can be included on the map. These title blocks can be edited directly here in GeoAtlas. You just double click on the title block, you start typing in whatever you want, or they can be customized outside of GeoGraphix through a Word document. Set it up however you want to set it up, and then you save it into your title block folder. That title block folder will be in the same place where the north arrow folder was. That's C, program data, GeoGraphix data, and then it says north arrow folder, there's one for title blocks. So you just save the file in there, and you'll be able to find it from the list of available title blocks that we have set up here. Most of these are pre-set up. Here's one that I've already saved and worked on. It's got my name, the date, the area that I'm working in, and the company logo. And include anything else that you want there in that title block. So let's go ahead and click OK to drop that in there on the map. And I'll put that over here and make it a little bit bigger. And last little bit that I want to include in here, under the map legend option here in GeoAtlas, you can include a map legend from Geo, one that's kind of pre-built through the program here. You just choose the entities that you want to include in the map legend. However, you don't get a lot of control with that or a lot of customization options. So what you can do is you can actually create a map legend outside of the program as a meta file. In this case, I've set one up through PowerPoint. So I'll go back over here and I've got a slide here for it. So this is the map legend that I've created. Got kind of my drilled section highlights, the cumulative oil, gas and water pie chart symbols, and then some well symbols for my gas well, my oil wells, and then a line representing my wellbore path. And I can include any other information that I want in here depending on what's being presented on the map. But I've set up this map legend through a PowerPoint slide. And then you can save it out as a meta file, an enhanced meta file, EMF file again. And then through GeoAtlas, I can insert that image directly into the map here. So I can insert the meta file, go out to wherever I've saved that. There's the legend. And then I can just drag the box of where I want to drop that map legend in. So I can create these outside of the program, and then give you a bit more customization through there. Set it up however you want it to look, do whatever kind of customization you want to over there, and then you just drop it directly into the map presentation here. So a bit more flexible, a little bit more clean, and how you can set up the map legend there. Can resize this a little bit, make it a little bit bigger here. So I got my scale bar, I got my legend, I've got my my title block, I've got my north arrow, got the page setup size to however I want to get that set up to. And so now I'm ready to go ahead and print that map if I wanted to do that. I'm going to drop one more thing in here, but one other thing I'll note about those inserting meta files, you're not just limited to map legends. You can put any kind of image that you want in there. Sometimes you can take a cross-section that you've built through X section, export that out as a meta file, and you can include a cross-section in here. Same with the section of your prism log. You can take a section of prism log, export that out as a meta file or an image, and then display that in here. And again, you don't even have to insert images if you don't want to bring any of that in, or that way. If you have a different format and you can't turn it into a meta file, you can also either snip it or you can copy and paste. So simply just copy and paste objects directly here into the final presentation as well. So that could be any kind of image file. Pull something up off of Google, copy that, paste it into here, whatever you want to do. You can include that information directly here in the final presentation. Simple copy and paste there. So from here, like I said, you can print that information out, send it out to your printer, your PDF writer, or you can also export it out as a graphic. Export out the map image, JPEG, bitmap, PNG, EMF, TIFF image. A couple different options you have in there, and you can control your DPI and your image size through here. So again, I set it up as 36 by 42. However, I'm only taking up about 34 by 40 there. Some of that's cut out there. So you can and change the image size there if you want for how it's going to be brought out. Give it a file name, choose where you export that file out to, and then do whatever you need to with that image, whether it be inserting it into your PowerPoint presentation or printing directly off of that image. A couple different options you have there. So one last thing I want to do here, kind of mentioned before with your ESRI layers, you want to make sure those are at the bottom of the list. I've got an ESRI list here, or ESRI layer here. So I'm going to drop that in there. It is at the bottom of the list, but it did kind of cover up some of my my thematics. So there's sometimes some manipulation you'll have to do with some of that. I'm going to go in here and toggle off my thematic through the layer display attributes. And then come back over here into the layer tree and toggle it back on. Now in doing so, this should overlay the thematics back on top of the image. And I'm going to go back into page view. Should still be able to see that information. So I can include that ESRI image into my final presentation as well, depending on the source of your ESRI image and kind of where it's coming from. So I might need to move my scale bar around a little bit there, make it pop out a little bit more so it's not covered up by some of that. But you may get watermarks with your ESRI images depending on the source. I'm just pulling this directly off of ESRI, so they've included that. Just be aware that wherever you get that from, that may be included in there in the final print. So just be kind of careful with that. If you're using your own internal ESRI images, you probably shouldn't have to worry about that. So just be aware that that may be included in the final presentation. Okay, so that's kind of setting up all the map objects there. Setting up how I want to print all that information out, send it out to the PDF file, or send it out to an image file. And try different options with it as well. The image file, the PDF writer, and the plotter images. Sometimes they'll have different options for how those objects are rendered, either depending on the image viewer or the plotter driver that you have available for it. ESRI provides some drivers if you notice that things aren't printing out correctly in that final presentation. So with that, we'll kind of finish up the presentation here. We'll go into the next slide.